Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. We are so happy to be here. And I feel like, not gonna lie, this is like such an incredible treat. We're so excited to just kind of have a conversation that we've had so many times behind closed doors. And I think it's kind of a dream to be able to share this kind of conversation with all of you. So I just want to thank you all for being here and for kicking off Fashion Week with us, because that's pretty amazing to just be able to say, like, this is what it's really all about. We really want to be able to have a conversation about inclusivity, and we really want to have a conversation about identity and how we can help each other build. And this is a perfect place to do it. So thank you, IMG, New York Fashion Week, BMW. This is so exciting. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy for us to be able to kind of establish this amazing energy. Also, really quickly, I wanted to shout out Nikki Ogunaki for this last Fashion Week. She interviewed me in the talk series, and she had this beautiful Manolo Blahnik notebook, and she's here today. And I complimented it during the conversation, and then at the end, she gifted it to me. I didn't know she was going to be here today, but I decided to use it today to interview Halima, and I'm like, all the good energy and juju and, you know, all that good stuff. So thank you, and thank you just all for just being so supportive. This is amazing. Okay, so all done. How are you today? How is your heart today?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited and so honored. I feel like Fashion Month, it's so many emotions, so I'm kind of going through it.
I know, but when did you actually get in? Yesterday?
It feels like a week ago, but it's only been 2 days. I still live in Minnesota, so I got in.
I feel like that's a really important thing for people to know. You still live in Minnesota, but for a very specific reason. Why do you live in Minnesota?
Okay, do we have time?
We have
Everyone
a little bit of time.
Okay, I'm gonna sell you all on Minnesota very fast. So Minnesota, we are the bold North. Actually, we don't want to be clumped up with Iowa, so we rebranded the entire state. It's actually the bold North and the Midwestern states surrounding it. And then we have all 4 seasons, beautiful lakes, actually over 14,000 lakes, biggest mall in America. Our airport, MSP, was ranked #1 3 years in a row, best in the country. Okay, I'll stop right there. But that's why, wait. Speaking of culture and bringing people together, Minnesota, we have the largest Hmong community, largest Somali and Ethiopian diaspora communities. It is the hub that brings everybody from all different walks of life together. And it's the place that has given me such a sense of community that I'm never, ever moving. I'm loyal.
She's the most loyal, and
I'm not on the PR team or
no. I was gonna be like, she def got paid for all of this. Wow. So this conversation is all about celebrating us as individuals and truly breaking barriers. And we, of course, know that you have been the first for so many. You were the first Muslim woman who wore a hijab to compete in the Miss Minnesota pageant. First Muslim woman in a hijab to cover several magazines and to wear and rock a burkini in Sports Illustrated. Why was being the first in so many different platforms in fashion so important for you?
I think it really comes back to representation. And I just remember, like, growing up in Minnesota, you know, I had so many things that make up who I am. On one hand, I'm a proud Somali American. On the other hand, I'm a refugee. I have that background. My family's originally from Somalia, escaped the civil war. You know, like, I have that identity that is me. And on the other hand, I'm also a proud Minnesotan. So I felt like growing up, I didn't have anybody who I could look up to that shared that, shared something from my story. So I think it's important to, you know, seek out change, try new things, be the first. If you don't see yourself represented, I always tell girls and really everybody, be that person, you know, because I think we all are waiting for somebody who looks like us to be like, oh, they're in that space, so I can do this too, you know? So I want to be that person for young girls in my community.
I think there's like a struggle between understanding that there is opportunity to be the first, and also when you see the lack of representation, wondering what the actual reason that lack of representation exists. Like, I know when I was growing up and I never saw
anybody who looked like me on television, I thought, well, there must be a reason. You must have to look a type of way to be on television. You must have to look a type of way to compete in a pageant. And then when somebody breaks that rule, that societal rule, the doors flood open. For example, after you competed in Miss Minnesota, 7 Somali women the year after competed. And we've had these conversations of how many people have sent us messages about like, I've quit my major, I've quit my job, I've decided to pursue this because I've seen you be able to do it. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, y'all. It's happened before. We're just gonna ignore her.
It actually doesn't look like it looks good yeah. Okay.
Okay, turban tutorial, everyone. Yeah!
Turban, yes.
Surprise! This was actually all part of the plan all along.
Also, like, people have bad hair days. We have bad hijab days all the time. It actually, that looks great.
It's all good.
Do you know how often she gets asked to do tutorials like this? You guys are getting prime front row seat and something. That's
all pre-planned.
Yeah. No, it's so good. Also, this is why we need more hijab stylists around, and just throwing that out there, Brooke. You're right there. So just like the influx of messages and realizing that, okay, we can do this, we have the ability to do this, but how do we build support within our own communities, but then also we're in a room filled with people who work in spaces where they can be allies, where they can support? How do we make that connection so that we get the right support and we are amplifying the right voices in these spaces?
I think for me, okay, being the first, it's amazing. It's changed my life, but it also means absolutely nothing if there's not a second, a third, a fourth. You know, the journey needs to continue, and it's all about opening the doors so other people feel like they can walk in. And so for me, I always try to set a good example because I understand, like, with modeling, for example, IMG, shout out to my team. They took me on, but it wasn't a matter of signing the first hijabi. They signed Halima. You know, it was a 4-hour meeting. Actually, all my meetings at IMG are always 4 or 5 hours. It's actually a date, really. But so it was about a conversation, and they asked me, you know, what are your passions? Got to know me. I got to know my team, what brought them to fashion, and moving into that space, I knew I was comfortable because I had people who believed in me. I knew I didn't have to ever conform to get the job. I knew that I was accepted for who I am, and most of all, they listened. In that meeting, UNICEF was brought up. And then sure enough, you guys set the meeting. Ivan's here, David's here, my entire team is here. They set up the meeting, and then it led to another conversation because, you know, I was born and raised in a refugee camp in Kenya. I did not want to do fashion if I couldn't do activism with it. I always like combining both worlds because I think that's who I am, you know, and they listened and they really made my career for me and the things that I was interested in. And so I think it's not about bringing people on just to check a list, but more importantly, bringing on people, getting to know their stories, getting to know their journeys, because even with us, we're both Muslim, but we come from so many like different backgrounds, different journeys, different obstacles, and everybody is an individual at the end of the day. So it's about sharing your story. It's about getting to know your talent. It's about being the first. BMW, being the first. I love you guys, and thank you so much for having me. And congratulations on the partnership. And yes, I'm ready for my BMW. Wink.
And everybody gets a free car.
You get a car! You get a car! You get a car!
So I love that you brought up conforming, because that is a conversation that we've had before, and I've just been thinking a lot about, especially when it comes to fashion. And fashion is celebrated so much because of self-expression, because of individuality. And many other industries, the reality is they don't celebrate that sense of individuality. But even within fashion, there are still some barriers, whether it be with body types, whether it be with skin color, whether it be with what your religious background is, whatever it is. So how should we, all of us today in this room, approach celebrating individuality and combating the sense of conforming, because we know that truly celebrating individuality is our biggest strength?
I think it's about reminding, especially like the girls in the industry. That's what I think. It's modeling. It's really, like the designer picks out the outfit for you. You come to a shoot, everything's already prearranged. But it's about also inspiring girls to know that you don't have to change who you are. You're perfect just the way you are. And I always say, like, don't change yourself, change the game. And that sounds really simple, but it's, again, like when you have that really strong sense of self, you can walk into any room and know that I'm good just the way I am, because what's that quote? Why fit in when you're born to stand out, by Beyonce or something?
Can you tell us about a time that you were able to do that, and then you came out like, even if you were scared in that process, you came out feeling stronger because you realized you had that impact?
Well, I always bring it back to my first ever runway show. So Karine Rothfield is like my fairy fashion godmother. That woman believed in me. She put me on my first ever photo shoot was actually for CR Fashion Book's cover. So talk about like making a big first. But then she also put me on the runway. But a lot of people don't realize that first initial fitting when I went for Yeezy Season 7, I didn't get the look because it didn't fit my personal wardrobe requirement. And so I left thinking, great, now I can't even tell my friends, you know what I mean? Because who's gonna believe you? Like, oh, I came this close, but nobody's gonna believe that. So I was like kind of bummed. And then I went back to the hotel and then thinking like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to participate in the show, but they called us back. They said, come back, we have a second look. And sure enough, like it worked. So I think when you're willing to walk away when it's not the right fit, I think that's sending a message. And I think people really, especially in the industry, I think stylists, designers, brands, like they really want to be inclusive, not just to the person, So by them inviting me back and then me getting able to like participate in the show, that was so important for my career because it was the first time that I knew I don't have to conform. I don't have to change who I am. And it kind of set the mark for what was to come.
I think that's also so important to touch on because even from your experience, you talk a lot from a very personal perspective, a very individual perspective. But we also know that, you might be Muslim, I might be Muslim, but we might practice differently, we might dress differently. And if there are almost 4 million Muslims in America, that means there are almost 4 million ways to be a Muslim. And that applies for any sub-community, right? And sometimes it's easier for brands or for companies or for designers or whoever to see someone as an individual who might be filling out a box, right? And not recognize that they still have to ask them personalized questions. They still have to say, what are you comfortable with? Because what you're comfortable with might not be what I'm comfortable with. And I think that kind of takes us into the conversation about tokenization and how we find that when you belong to a sub-community, you're often tokenized because to the naked eye, metaphorically speaking, you're seen as someone who's going to be able to check off that diversity quota, when in reality, the changes are made at the decision-making table. And that's where like real inclusion comes in, right? And making sure that that diversity replicates and looks the same way in the places that are making the decisions. So how would you tell all of us today how you think the industry should combat tokenization when it comes to campaigns, when it comes to runways, and properly treating people throughout every aspect of this place?
Well, what I tell myself, right, is I'm Muslim, I'm from Minnesota, wink, wink. All these things that make up who I am, but at the end of the day, I'm Halima, and that's who I am. And I can't represent every single Muslim woman. I can't represent every single Somali American. I can't represent everybody in my community. But what I can do is be a good role model, right? And so I think it's also our responsibility to start the conversation. What am I comfortable with? What are my specific wardrobe requirements? Because people are listening, but it's also about having the conversation. And I think when people want to know, and sometimes people, if you don't speak up, like they can't read your mind. So every time I go to a shoot, my contracts at IMG, like you guys already send it out to, before I even get on set, they already know this is her wardrobe requirement. She can do this, she can do that. And actually what I'm finding out is stylists love working with hijabis because endless. I've had Gucci pants on my hijab. I had like, they get really creative and outside the box, because I think when you have parameters you have to work around, it's like, maybe I'll give you like a boot on your head, and then like, you really get creative. And at the end of the day, isn't fashion really the space for the world's most creative minds? So I think that's like what I love, is like the conversation. And you're right, like every modesty, it can be so different depending on who you're speaking with, and everybody has their own personal interpretation. So I think the conversations need to be had, and I think it's also our responsibilities to engage, to educate, because not everybody knows.
That's absolutely true. I think recognizing that not everybody knows, but knowing that we have to be in a comfortable enough space where the conversation is like not people just listening to us complain or share our concerns, but really listening with intent.
I don't think it's complaining at all. I think it's about having the conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And I think for me, what I'm finding out is like, back to the tokenism point. I don't see myself as a token at all. What I see myself as the first, because I look back at pageantry, 7 girls the following year, modeling. Now every single agency after IMG has a hijab wearing model. It's not uncommon to see a hijabi on a cover. It's not uncommon to see a hijab wearing woman on the runway. It's become so normalized, and I haven't even been in the industry for that long. It's only been 2 years. So I do see so much change, and I think we're headed in the right direction. And I give so much credit to like the designers, the editors, because collectively, like the entire industry has to be open to being inclusive, taking risks, doing something that's never been done before, being innovative. So that's how I see it.
How do you think the role of that type of inclusion and that type of celebration of inclusion has been impacting our culture today with everything that's going on in the world?
You. She's being so humble, but when you were in Playboy as the first journalist to wear a hijab, that even to me was like, oh wow, she could do this and still be herself, and that was a celebration, right? So I think by stepping out, doing something new, like you inspired me living in Minnesota, and so how can I inspire the next group of girls, and vice versa? I think that's where our conversation should be headed, because that was something unconventional. That's something that's never been done before, and in a million years before you did that, I would have never thought a hijabi, Playboy, compatible. I would have never known. But you took that risk, and look what happened.
Well, I think that also, well, thank you. That's nice of you. And
Ivan's going to sign her to IMG. That's what's going to happen.
You're so funny. No, I mean, I think we both got, you know what, let's be just super real. We both did 2 really controversial things, right? I was in Playboy and Halima was in Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, and the world kind of flipped on its head for a little bit because those were spaces that had never welcomed people like us before. But I think what was really important about doing those things was it wasn't about being in those magazines and being like, everybody go pick up one of these magazines. It was more about there are so many people who are picking up these magazines already who have never seen people who looked like us. And so the messages, I mean, at least, and I'm sure you shared a similar experience that I got after doing Playboy, were so many readers who were like, I have never seen a Muslim woman talk this way or just dress this way or look this way. And it had opened their eyes because typically the media representation of people who look like us is not the most positive because it's coming through a lens and a gaze of people who do not share our experience. And I think that's what we're trying to get at, right? And putting ourselves in spaces where we're like, we still maintain our sense of identity. We still maintain the truth in our story and our message, but we want to come to spaces and bring the light that exists within those stories and be able to open our arms and welcome people to connectivity and commonality instead of just continuous polarization. And that doesn't mean it comes easy. And there was definitely backlash within our own community for both of us. And we have talked significantly about like this concept of horizontal hostility and, doing things very radical or very different within your own community and people just not supporting because they expect you to meet their standards of living. So how do we support, and this is like a personal conversation, so welcome to our
to our TED Talk.
How do we maintain a sense of strength in fighting those fights and breaking those barriers while still, you know, leading by example for the people who are trying to follow in our footsteps?
I think, I think we're doing it already by just being ourselves and just doing what we love and trying new things. Like, not everything needs to be a statement, but by just following your passions, you are making a statement, you know? So I think just see, I always think last. I always say yes, I want to do this, and then I'm like, but then it always works out, because even Sports Illustrated, you know, I think it's about the conversation, right? Especially for our community, it's like, okay, tell me how hijab and Sports Illustrated go together. And then that's where I come in, because this is a conversation I had with my mother. Believe it or not, I didn't tell her until after it came out. Surprise! Surprise! Oh, but I was like, you know, because she's like flipping out on the phone, like, like, why are you laying on the beach like this? And I'm like, no, it's actually fashion, and I thought I did good. And she's like, well, you know, because, you know, mom wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer, and my grade said, no, sis, no. But I had the conversation with her, and it was about, okay, Mom, right now we're living in a time, for me, where, you know, the burkini is banned in certain countries. You can't go to public pools and swim in a burkini. Like, this is something that we're going through right now. I did not learn how to swim. I did not participate in swimming classes in school because there was no swimsuit that I could wear that was modest. So it is absolutely necessary for me to do this, you know, because it's not just about, oh, I'm shooting for a magazine. It's about the social awareness that you're spreading and the conversation. Like, that piece, it was on CBS, it was on every single media outlet, and that's important because that means so many more people are now being educated on what a burkini is. And a lot of people are seeing that, you know, it's beautiful, it's sexy, it's modern, there's nothing wrong with it. If a girl could proudly walk in a bikini, a two-piece, good for her. That's what makes her feel confident. If I want to wear my burkini and that makes me feel my absolute best, I should probably proudly wear it. So it's about that. And then my mom was like, okay, you still could have posed better, but okay.
We got the okay. No, I mean, even on a personal level, like, that meant so much to me because I've always said, like, the hardest part about wearing hijab for me has always been, like, going to the beach and swimming, because those were things that I loved to do. And I didn't wear hijab until, like, later in life, I'm 25, but, you know, like, you know, and it, like, knowing that it's banned in France just to wear, like, a long sleeve swimsuit. And you know why that always bothered me so much? Because I'll tell you a little story, because that's what I do. I remember I was on a plane. I was shooting a series, and I was on a plane, and I sat down next to this teacher we were in Atlanta, and I'll never forget this. And we started having this conversation, and she was asking me all of these questions, and then she got to the question of, like, she said, I have a really stupid question. And I was like, there's no such thing. Like, I've literally been asked, do you wear this in the shower? I feel like you can't really beat that.
It's called Head and Shoulders. Duh. Everybody knows.
So, and she said, well, what do you wear to swim? And this was years ago. And I was like, that's actually not a stupid question at all. And I had pulled up what I wore, which was like a rash guard and some board shorts with some leggings under it or whatever. And I pulled up a photo, and she started getting super emotional. And she said to me, and she was like, she had been opening up about how her husband had, like, her ex-husband had cheated on her, and she was going through this, like, really rough time in her marriage. And she got really emotional, and she looked at me, and she thanked me for showing her, because she said, you know, I had stage 4 cancer, skin cancer, and I am in recovery, and after that diagnosis, like, I completely stopped, like, laying out with my skin out or whatever on the beach and in the pool. And my husband had told me, like, he didn't want to be seen in public with me dressed like that. And I remember just, like, being so, like, in shock. And she was like, and so now when I go on dates, on the first date, I tell people, like, hey, I just want to let you know if we ever go to the pool or we go to the beach, like, this is what I wear. And she was talking about wearing a rash guard and leggings. And she was like, and sometimes people are not cool with it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, this entire time, like, she's having this conversation. And I was just like, and this woman I learned earlier in the conversation, she thought I was forced to wear the hijab. She thought all Muslim women are oppressed. And I was like, and she was dealing with oppression from a man in her life because he was ashamed of her dressing a type of way because she had cancer. And so, and I saw in her eyes, like, the switch change, and her realize, like, we might be spoon-fed narratives in media, but until you sit down with people and until you realize, like, her and I had something in common, like something deeply in common, not that we liked a similar sports team, which I don't even watch sports, but whatever, like, just to use the example. That was actually the day of the Super Bowl, I remember.
Which took place in Minnesota.
But there's, like, this deep, like, need and understanding that if we sit with people, like, if you and I sit together, like, we will always be able to find a root of commonality. And that's, like, a really good place to start with having these conversations, because so much is, like, lost in translation and misunderstood. And we have that responsibility to do so. So thank you for doing Sports Illustrated, because the little girl in me was really happy and it made me really emotional. And thank you for doing what you do, because, like, we need you. Okay, so for some fun questions.
But wait, we have to take a moment, okay? We have to take a moment. We are at New York Fashion Week, Spring Place, doing the kickoff to Fashion Week. 2 Muslim girls wearing a hijab. Like, how amazing is that? So thank you for making it possible.
Yeah, you guys, like, if you would have asked us this, like, just even a few years ago, we would have been like, that's a joke. But this is like these are the thoughts and the mood and the energy, not the sad energy, but, like, the happy part of the energy that we want to, like, just keep in mind the entire week, you know?
We're getting really, really intimate and comfortable.
Yeah. But I also feel like this is just a reminder of, like, how much we need these conversations.
Oh yeah, you guys thought there was just one use for it?
I love this. Oh man, okay. Cool, great. We have, like, great, okay. So I'm gonna ask you fun questions.
Okay, fun questions.
Hijab tutorial part 2.
Yeah.
All right. So, what do you feel like was your first, these are gonna be, like, super fast, so we don't have to get into, like, really long life story, but what was your first big break?
We still have 2 hours to fill.
No,
I'm kidding.
they want us out of here. What was your first big break?
Miss Minnesota USA.
First cover.
CR Fashion Book.
First runway show.
Yeezy Season 7.
We already answered all these. First New York Fashion Week memory.
Ooh. It was for CR Fashion Book, for Yeezy Season 7. That was my first ever runway show. And that was also the first time that I saw Kim Kardashian. And oh my gosh, I think I scared that woman half to death. I was like, I saw you on my TV. I've been watching you. And she's like, security. But no, it was cool. And yeah.
And she didn't get that scared. Only a little bit. First thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I always turn on Spotify and I listen to Rihanna or Beyonce.
What did you listen to this morning?
Oh my gosh, I actually listened to the Thong Song by Cisco, which Libby actually taught me.
I love that you approve all of this. First looks or last looks?
Oh, I think, well, for shows, close. I want to close the show. I think that's like, that's it.
Open road or road less traveled?
For me, I would say road less traveled. I want to be a bridge, and on that bridge, I want to drive my BMW. So, Mike, let's make it happen.
She's really good at getting those brand deals. First brand deal.
I think American Eagle.
Oh my God, I remember that. Night owl or morning person?
Definitely night owl.
Really? Ugh, morning person for sure. Go-to beauty ritual.
It's never too early to start using under-eye serums.
Yeah,
I learned
true
that this year.
Oh, actually, I'll teach you a little under-eye serum thing. Not serum, but like trick. Somebody on set a couple of days ago gave me the craziest like back and neck massage just to get rid of my under-eye circles, and they disappeared like this because apparently it's all about blood flow and circulation or whatever.
So right after this, you're going to catch us.
I'm going to get you. Yeah, I got you. Favorite designer right now?
I would say Max Mara, but you know, I have my hijab line, so I definitely have to say Halima by Madanisa.
The young person that is inspiring you right now?
I think Yara Shahidi. Every time I see her on my Instagram, I'm like, yes, queen, yes.
She's so wonderful. Legend and icon who inspires you?
I definitely have to say Kareen, because, you know, she's done
Your
so
fairy
much.
godmother.
Yes, and like styles me so beautifully, and yeah, she's amazing.
And what are you looking forward to the most this week?
Ooh. I mean, we start off New York Fashion Week this way. I can't even imagine how we're going to end.
No, that's perfect. Thank you all so much. I think we have time for a couple of questions, if anybody has any questions, or if you guys just all want to leave. Oh.
Come on, don't be shy. Yeah. Oh my gosh, the X, the new one that I drove here in. That's what I want, and I want to be the first in my family to own a BMW. So thank you for my BMW.
Another boundary you want to break?
Well, Ivan, I want to get into hosting. I want to get into acting. I want to do a book one day, a makeup contract. Can we call up Maybelline?
Everything.
Like today, L'Oreal. You know, just something small.
Not big dreams at all.
What do you want to do next?
I'm working on it. I'm working on a TV show I'm really, 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 really excited about.
So she's gonna beat me to the punch, but you're gonna
No, but
add
it's
me
not
as a
hosting.
co-host.
It's not host. Our TV dreams are very different. But it's gonna be great because then I'll bring you on and you'll bring me on, and you know, we just get all the nepotism. We know people love. Okay, any more questions, or should we all just go bounce and have all the fun this week? No? Yeah? Yeah. Advice you give to other models. Whoa, that's for you. I'm not a model.
You walked a show,
I
technically.
walked one show. What is the advice you give to other models?
I would say the advice that I give myself is, you know, don't change yourself, change the game, be who you are.
I love that.
Be kind, you know, but you also have to love yourself for people to love you. So having good self-esteem, telling yourself kind words, being kind to yourself, that's the advice I would give any young person.
And just to add to that, because I know like self-love is like a consistent journey. You're not going to love yourself every day, but I think starting with self-acceptance and like understanding who you are and accepting that person, and then going on that journey of like loving yourself and feeling confident every day, and then recognizing it's okay to have bad days too, because we all do. I pinky promise. Amazing. Yeah.
You spoke on your mom.
We got to be careful with this one.
Coming from the Caribbean, I feel like the same type of image where they want us. How do you work around that with your family?
So, I'll let you
No,
go.
I'm going to just repeat the question. Just how do you work around having a more supportive parent or family when it comes to like pursuing your dreams?
Okay, so I think I'm starting to understand my mom. been 21 years, but I think I get it. She wants me to follow the road that's conventional. I think like any mother, what she cares about is ultimately my happiness. But before that, she thought by me going to college, me getting an education, in a lot of ways, she was kind of living through me because those were opportunities that she didn't have, that she didn't want me to miss out on. So I think for her, where we are now finding commonality and where we met is, hey mom, you raised me, I think you did a good job. I pay my taxes on time, no, okay. But I think for me, it's about, okay, so she wanted me to do something where it's about it's serving others, you know? And so that's where UNICEF comes in. She doesn't understand Vogue, magazines, runway shows. She really still thinks I don't have a job. She's always like, okay, but what do you really do? And I was like, I walk around in heels all day, ma, and it's a job. No, I'm kidding. But for her, I combine both worlds, you know, fashion, activism, and that's the bridge. So finding the bridge with your parents, but I think that is the one relationship, especially mother and daughter, that you should nurture. And I think their happiness ultimately does come first, but it's also about, you know, still serving yourself and following your passions, living for yourself, because when I'm 89, I don't want to look back and say, "Gah, ma, I should have really followed my heart," you know?
I also, like, yesterday just watched this Gary Vaynerchuk video talking about, shout out to Gary, talking about, like, when it comes to parents wanting something for their kids. And his response to that was, like, asking them, like, are you happy with what you did? Are you happy with where you are right now? Because, like, at the end of the day, they might project, unfortunately, and this is, like, I mean, it's also very cultural, but they might project their cultural insecurities on you. But we live in a very different time, especially, are you first gen? Like, did your parents immigrate here?
Well, the kick is my mom is a doctor.
Oh, you better get that degree, girl. I'm telling you right now, no
See?
excuses. You better leave here, go clock into university. I'm already telling ya.
I have my accounting degree, but it's just, I don't.
Then you did it. Yeah, you did what you needed to do. But, like, ultimately,
Are you happy?
find
If
that
your mom
happiness,
asked you, are
yeah.
you happy?
I am, but I know I could possibly be happier.
Go for it. Amazing. Thank you all so much again. Appreciate you.